527. That is the exact number of meters you have to land an airplane on at Tenzing Hillary Airport in Lukla, Nepal. I mean, when I first saw this, I honestly couldn't believe it. Just picture this for a second. A tiny strip of asphalt literally carved into the side of the Himalayas, sitting at a breathtaking 2,845 meters in elevation, complete with a terrifying 12% uphill slope that just ends abruptly in a solid mountain wall. If you're planning to trek to Everest Base Camp, this crazy runway is where your adventure actually begins. And for a lot of people, it's right here where their carefully laid travel plans first collide with the extreme reality of mountain logistics. Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to systematically untangle the massive, complex mess of Everest trekking logistics for the 2026 season. We are drawing directly from the boots-on-the-ground expertise of Majestic Trails Nepal to give you a true, chronological guide to surviving the delays, the costs, and the wild unpredictability of reaching the world's most famous base camp.
Here is our roadmap for today's pre-flight briefing. 1. The world's craziest airport. 2. The true cost of flying. 3. The Ramechhap reality. 4. Helicopters and weather delays. And 5. The solo trekker trap.
Section 1. The world's craziest airport. Why Lukla matters. Now you might be wondering, why do trekkers even put themselves through the stress of this flight at all? Well, the simple answer is that there's just no realistic road alternative. Driving to the closest possible point and then walking in, that adds 5 to 7 days to your trek in each direction. The Lukla flight collapses all that brutal hiking into a quick 35-minute journey. But because of the extreme physical limitations of this tiny runway, only specialized, highly agile small turboprop planes can land here. And currently, only 3 airlines are even certified to operate them: Tara Air, Sita Air, and Summit Air. Plus, think about this. Every single drop of aviation fuel, every spare part, it all has to be flown in. Add in this severe weather dependency where airlines frequently have to eat the costs of canceled flights, and, well, you can see how all these extreme constraints naturally drive up the price of a ticket.
Section 2. The true cost of flying. Where does your money go?
Now, what's really interesting about this pricing structure is the stark difference in costs based purely on who is sitting in the seat. In 2026, a one-way flight from Kathmandu to Lukla for a foreign trekker costs roughly $254, but a licensed Nepali trekking guide, they pay just $65. While a licensed Nepali porter pays roughly $100, and this tiered structure is totally intentional. The Nepali government actively supports the domestic trekking economy by offering these discounted rates to local, licensed professionals. So if an honest trekking agency hands you a breakdown of your trip costs, you should absolutely see these distinct, separate prices for your crew. They are genuinely paying a different fare than you are.
Another huge factor is your departure airport, because this radically shifts both your budget and your schedule. A direct flight out of Kathmandu runs about $254, but departing from Ramechhap drops the foreign trekker price down to about $210. Why the discount? Because the Ramechhap flight is only 20 minutes long. It burns less fuel and allows the airlines to do much quicker turnarounds. But you really have to ask yourself, is saving $44 actually worth the logistical headache it causes?
Section 3. The Ramechhap reality. The midnight detour.
So if you're trekking in the peak season months, we're talking October and November, Kathmandu's airport simply gets too congested. To handle all that volume, aviation authorities basically pack up and move most Lukla operations east to Manthali Airport in Ramechhap. And here is the brutal chronological reality of what that actually means for your first day. You are going to wake up in Kathmandu at 1 a.m. Yes, 1 a.m. on your vacation. You'll then drive 5 to 6 hours through the pitch-black night in a private vehicle, arriving at Manthali Airport right around 6:30 a.m., just in time to board that short 20-minute flight to Lukla. It is a grueling start. But honestly, knowing this ahead of time prevents that massive shock when you realize you aren't flying comfortably out of Kathmandu like you probably assumed.
Section 4. Helicopters and weather delays. When things go wrong? If we map out a typical morning up there, you'll instantly see why you should always book the earliest flight possible. Mountain weather decays rapidly throughout the morning as the sun heats the valley and the clouds start building up. So the very first flights at 6:15 a.m., they have the absolute best chance of making it. By the second flight, right around 8 a.m., the weather usually holds. But if you're scheduled on the third flight of the day, somewhere around 9:30 a.m., you are officially in the ultimate danger zone for cancellations. Afternoon flights are incredibly rare.
All that being said, we really have to remember that mountain weather is wildly unpredictable. As Pravin Adhikari points out in our source material, don't assume if I'm not on an early flight, I'm not going. It depends entirely on the day. Because sometimes those late morning flights miraculously squeeze right through a break in the clouds. So the big question is, what exactly is your backup plan if the planes are grounded?
So the crucial point is, the backup plan often comes down to this massive number, $600. That is the steep, one-way cost per person for a helicopter backup during the monsoon season, which runs through late September. And the reason for this sky-high price? Well, during the monsoon, safety regulations strictly require 2 pilots for redundancy in poor weather. 2 pilots means way higher operational costs, and you guessed it, that gets passed directly to the passenger. Once the monsoon ends, pre-booked seats do drop down to around $500.
Let's actually walk through what this looks like in practice. Switching from a grounded plane to a helicopter mid-trip is a pretty high-stress sequence. First, you have to monitor the weather, officially cancel and refund your plane ticket with the airline, quickly contact a helicopter operator to secure a seat, adjust the massive payment difference, and finally board. Now, if you are traveling with a reputable guided operator, your guide monitors the weather from Kathmandu and handles this entire pivot seamlessly, often before the plane is even officially canceled. But if you're a solo trekker, oh boy, you're stuck negotiating this directly at the airport in a panicked crowd of other trekkers, watching those last-minute prices skyrocket well past that $600 mark.
Section 5. The Solo Trekker Trap. Surviving the return flight.
Okay, so you've finished your trek, you're back in Lukla, and your printed ticket says you fly to Kathmandu tomorrow at 6:30 a.m. You're safe, right? Actually, scratch that. You are definitely not. This is the single most valuable insider tip for independent travelers, the 3 p.m. rule. You absolutely must physically go to the airline counter in Lukla after 3 p.m. the day before your flight. Why? Because the airlines finalize the next day's schedule in the afternoon based on brand new weather forecasts. It is incredibly common for a Kathmandu-bound flight to be completely rerouted overnight to Ramechhap because of valley weather, or for the departure time to just wildly shift. If you don't check in person after 3 p.m., you might show up the next morning to find your flight completely gone. Or worse, you might land at the wrong destination and miss your international connection entirely. Guided trekkers don't even worry about this because their guides check automatically, but solo trekkers fall into this trap all the time.
To wrap this all up, here is your definitive, non-negotiable survival toolkit. Always book your flight at least 2 months in advance to lock in that precious first morning slot. Always keep $200 to $400 in physical emergency cash hidden away just in case you get stuck and need to fund a last-minute helicopter. Never, ever book your international flight home for the exact same day you return from Lukla. Build in a solid 2 to 3 day buffer. And finally, pack light. You have a strict 15-kilogram limit for the flight, and excess weight will literally get your bags left behind on the tarmac.
A trip to Everest Base Camp is absolutely the adventure of a lifetime. The flight? That's really just the 35-minute prologue to the whole shebang. But armed with these insider secrets, understanding where your money goes, mastering the Ramechhap midnight run, and knowing exactly how to outsmart those mountain weather delays, are you truly prepared to face the world's most dramatic runway? Let that question sit with you as you start planning your 2026 Himalayan adventure.